All right. Clap one on three. One, two, three. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're so glad that you're here. As always, I am your host, Lauren Ash, and as always, I am joined by my co-hostess with the mostess, Christy Oxborrow. How you feeling?
I'm doing great.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
I
jazzed to
had
be
a,
here.
I just had a nighttime Diet Coke, and that's always a roll of the dice.
hmm I just like the way you say it as though that's a different flavor. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like a nighttime Diet Coke as opposed to just a Diet Coke.
Yeah.
I like
Well,
that a lot.
after a certain hour, like we're talking, it's like
hmm
9:30 p.m. right now. This
Of
is rolling the
course.
dice. Normally, I'm someone that caffeine doesn't necessarily impact that greatly.
hmm
I think part of the problem is that I know I've drank it. It's psychosomatic. So now when I go to bed, is my brain going to
Oh,
be like, I'm dancing a little dance because you drank caffeine?
I get
It's
that.
not really about the caffeine. It's about the, you know,
Oh, you faked yourself out. I get
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Oh,
It's like a placebo effect.
I used to every night when we would like watch a movie, I was drinking a Coke. Thought nothing of it. I was like, didn't have any problem sleeping. And then I started getting sleeping problems, but I'm convinced that's just lady problems and not specifically Coke problems.
I don't know if you want to start
Sorry.
labeling things as Coke problems publicly, but that's,
You're right. You're right. That's not what I meant. The point is, yeah, I'm never sure anymore. Is it the caffeine or is it just like everything else? I don't know. My brain
yeah.
is just 90 miles an hour, just constantly whirring around in there. And I sometimes can't stop it.
I never stop it. It never stops.
Yeah,
It
you
never
try,
stops.
but
Yeah,
mm,
it's for me it was that first time I took Ativan. I had to do I'm claustrophobic and I took it to
mhm,
do an MRI and I was in the back of a cab. This was decades ago at this point with the friend of
mhm.
the podcast, Leslie Seiler. And I was silent because she had come with me to the appointment. We were going back to her house afterwards, and we were
Right.
silent for a longer beat than is normal. And then I just went, "This is how normal people feel."
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was the real thing for me, is that it like I was just shocked at how I was like, "Is this how people go through life? Like, do you go through life not
Mm,
feeling with your, thoughts racing,
of
anxiety
course.
always there, always a feeling of anxiety?" I was like, "People go through life with none of this, huh? Wow." That must be so nice for people.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a reason that when we go to bed, my husband knocks out pretty fast. And I let it go. But I call him on it every once in a while because I'm like, gosh, you fell asleep really fast. And he's just like, yep. He's like, what? You go to bed, you close your eyes. And I'm like, don't you like lay awake and like think about things and what are you doing tomorrow and what is this? He's like, I'll figure it out tomorrow. And I'm like, God, is this why we work? Because one of us just can't be stopped and is constantly like vibrating, and the other one is just so chill that he's like,
Oh,
eh.
you can't have two chills and you can't have two vibrators. Now who's this is like Coke problems all over again. Excuse me. You can absolutely have two
You,
vibrators. In fact, some people prefer to have the choice. But the
I,
point is this. No, it has to be one and the other. It has to. It has to be a yin and a yang. If you have two
Mhm.
chill people that are that chill, nothing's ever getting done.
I just want you to know all I'm thinking about is the fact that you said two vibrators, and then shortly after that, I thought you said it's got to be one in the other. And my brain put those together. Um, and I was just like, that lady knows how to have a good time. You know?
It's got to be one in the other.
There
Yes.
we go. There we
Oh
go.
my
Not
God.
even 5 minutes in.
Coke
And we're
problems and two vibrators. I mean, if ever there was an ad for the show, that would be it. Hey, do you like true crime, but do you also like people who inadvertently make sexual innuendos as well as drug comparisons? This
oh,
is the show for you.
in my head, I'm already picturing a can of Coke with two vibrators, almost like a Jolly Roger skull and crossbones situation.
That's incredible. That's
This is
incredible.
this is it. This is why it won't stop. It's just like a let's run through everything I need to get done tomorrow.
Hmm.
And then, okay, then I'll make a mental list of this should actually get done next. And I'm trying to do things so far in advance. Like I'll tell you this today, some cosplay pieces have arrived. I I will admit, I had a couple sleepless nights this week thinking about it. Um, it was such a tough decision. On one of the costumes, I came up with one. I was like, I'm gonna go slightly simpler in the costume, but I'm gonna try and go over the top with the accessories. Why? There doesn't need to be accessories. Get fucked, Lady Jane. You don't need to do this. Too
Hmm.
late. Too
Hmm.
late. Already got the pieces. I'm not gonna have the time for that. Um, and then the other one, even though we had talked about it, and we were like, we're gonna do this as a couple's costume. You're gonna be this, I'm gonna be this. And then I've hemmed and hawed of, am I really gonna be this? Am I gonna be something else? My big thing was trying to figure out how am I gonna pull it off. I've now officially decided on the character and I will not let myself go back. I have to keep pushing ahead.
There's
I'm,
part of me that wants to know, and there's part of me that wants the reveal.
of course, of
Unless
course.
you're just going with what you originally said.
I don't remember what I had
Well, here's the
originally
other thing.
said.
As soon as those words came out of my mouth, I realized that that's not any sort of marker because when we had the conversation,
Yeah,
it was like this one, no, this one. Well, it could be this one, but it also could be
yeah,
this one. Back to the first one. I think there's another one. So I don't even know really where we started, to be honest.
yeah. It,
I know where we started. I don't know where we ended.
yeah, yeah. The problem is when I'm given a single idea, my
Hmm.
brain just keeps going of like, how can I pull this off? How can I do this? Will this be possible? Could I do it this way? And it's why I got myself into a lot of trouble. I would say just a pickle. Last October, when I was doing two Halloween costumes for the kids, and I think two for, I think I was only really focusing on one for myself, because one I think was just various clothing pieces.
Hmm.
Because was last year the planes, trains, automobiles?
Was it?
I don't know.
Or was it the year before?
Son of okay. I
They
have it
all
written.
blend.
Yeah, I have well, I have you'll love this. I have a spreadsheet now that has a cosplay tab. Here we go. October. Oh, wow. So no, I was wrong. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was October 2023.
That's what I thought.
October 2024 for the episode We Were Eternal Sunshine.
That's
So
right.
again, I just once I had all the clothing pieces, I didn't have to do anything for it. Um,
Right, but then
Costume bit
for
was
the other
Disney.
one that you did, the Emperor's New Groove one, it was so elaborate. There was a
Yeah,
whole background and everything.
that I made a cardboard fish and I traced it on an entire sheet plastic tablecloth. Yeah, I
Hmm.
spent hours tracing that stupid fish. For what? Like this is the problem. I have these grand plans and I'm like, this is gonna be so great. And then at the end, I'm like, what did I do that for? And
Well,
this year, I'm pretty sure I only have to do one child costume. And I know it's early, but I just wanted to get an idea of
yeah.
where's his head at. So I asked my youngest, I was like, do you have any thoughts of what you might want to be for Halloween? I said, you don't have to choose now. I'm just curious if you had thoughts because I'm going to need time to think about how am I going to pull this off? Where am I going to buy these things? Because there's not a chance that he's going to pick a costume that exists that I can just buy off the rack. So I'm like, I
Right.
need something. So I'm going to need time. And he was like, yeah, I think I'm going to be a Blue Jays player. And I was like, great, done, sold. That'll be easy enough. Done. A few days go by. And I was like, and he was playing a baseball game on the Switch. And he was being Toronto Blue Jays. And a player was standing there at bat. And I went, oh, so you want to kind of be like that. So your pants look like this and whatever. And he goes, I think I've changed my mind. And I was like, great, you still have time. We don't have to narrow it down. Now he thinks he wants to be the mascot for the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Why? He's just gone from one of the easiest costumes to one of the most complex.
One that does not exist. This is how my children work. They have big dreamers, big imaginations, love it. And they come up with things that they want to,
Mhm.
be for Halloween, presents they want for Christmas and their birthdays, and none of them exist. And I was laying on the bed in like a mental freeze, like I just was like, I don't know, overwhelmed the other day, and I said to my husband, I was like, I only have myself to blame because every single time they're like, I want this. And I'm like, it doesn't exist. I've pulled it off somehow.
Mhm.
Like my middle one year for Christmas, all he wanted was a version of Mario Party that he could play that wasn't the video game. So I went to like a thrift store and bought an old board game. I think I did two board games because it was so large. And I painted the whole thing to look like the Mario Party thing. And I found these like Mario gold coins and I was like, here you go. And I made him a Mario Party board game because he wanted to play it in his room when he isn't allowed video games. And I was like, great. And so in his mind, he asked for it and he got it. He wanted a full Mario setup, and I took a bookshelf and made it the top level you is the Mario Cloud level. You go down in a pipe and you go because I think a friend of ours 3D printed the pipes. And so we attach the pipe in there and then you go down and it's another Mario level and you go down and suddenly it's the Bowser dungeon with the lava and everything. He asked for it, he got it. Super happy. My oldest wanted Minecraft Lego, and you'd think that's easy, it's everywhere. It did not exist yet.
Mm.
So I got Lego pieces and I like made them look like little Minecraft bricks. It was a nightmare. But again, it's my own fault. Because if I was just like, that doesn't exist, hun, and moved on, I'm not a dream crusher. Not gonna happen. So they're like, I want this insane thing. And I go, all right. Last year he wanted to be the mascot for the Boston Bruins. Done. This year, a giant gopher. Understood. We'll see.
Listen, it's your I guess this is the problem when you're a wizard and you make dreams come true. Then it feels like the chasm of
Yeah.
dreaming is never ending.
And here's the thing. I love that for them. I love that their imagination continues to go. There's something magical about it, and I love that. And it's also I refuse to let them down. So I'm like, I just can't. I'll figure it out. Who knows? He might change his mind. At some point in the next, I don't know, 2 months, he might go, changed his mind. He wants to go back and be the Toronto Blue Jays player. And I'll go, great. I'm going to give him a cutoff point of this is
Yeah.
it so that, and then I'll start getting pieces and figuring it out. But for now, yeah, I'm going to have a lot going on. And so once I finally decided on the pieces for me, I ordered different things from different places and some of them arrived today. And my oldest was like, "Oh, what's that stuff?" And I said, "Oh, it's for like Halloween cosplay." And he was like, "Already? It's August." And I was like, "Sir, one, we always record earlier than it seems, so I have to be prepared. Two, I'm gonna need time.
Yes.
I'm gonna have like this is gonna be stuff that I'm slowly doing over the course of like several weeks. So I'm like, I'm gonna need the time. So it's gonna be what it's gonna be. But I just love that I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna have to put a chunk of time in that second costume for the first one, I'm gonna go really simple. And then my brain went, but then spice it up with accessories. What are you doing? I
Well, again, we've all seen your amazing creations on the show. So much like with your children, I guess we are all expecting, you know.
Well, and that's the joke. I can't just show up and be like, I just put on some different clothes. No. But the one I agonized over, the topic that we never publicly said because we didn't
Yes.
publicly decide on until after.
Yes.
That one I agonized because there were too many options. Like
Mm.
I really struggled with it, but I think I've finally come with one that I'm happy with.
Wonderful.
But my God, this is gonna get interesting. This is gonna be my September. I think
Yeah.
I need to force myself to start as soon as possible once I've made lists of like this is what has to
Well,
happen.
that's for
These are
pleasure.
all the steps. You're right. It is. It is. Oh my God. My love of a list. Everyone knows. Um, my oldest is heading back to university soon, and so I'm taking him grocery shopping for the non-perishable things, like the toilet papers, the dish soaps, the canned goods, things like that, so he at least has stuff so he doesn't have to go get those sorts of things when he gets there. And so I've been slowly starting a list, and anytime he's like, "You know what I should get?" I write that down. And then I was like, "I know before we go, I need you to go look through the stuff you already have so I know and I don't buy a set like with stuff you don't need."
Right.
And he's like, "Okay." And then my husband went, "Yeah, yeah, you should make a list." Our son almost threw up. The thought of a list, he like fell apart. He was like, "A list? That's disgusting. Who does that?" And I'm like, "I make 8 lists a day. Easy."
And again, some of those are just for pleasure. Those
Yeah.
are,
Sometimes it's what write a list of all the lists I need to make. And sometimes, ooh, didn't like the way that one was written. I better write it out again for fun. But for him, the idea of a list, disgusting. He can't comprehend the fact that I take a list shopping because he's like, well then,
that's a wild one for me because
yeah.
I'm also like not great, but if I don't have a list in general, I'll
Mhm.
unravel. And grocery shopping, even with a list, I forget things.
Oh,
Somehow I
yeah.
like get distracted or
Mhm.
whatever. Like I can't imagine anybody grocery shopping without a list.
Oh, he said he goes with people who take a list and only get the stuff on the list. And he's like, where's the fun in that? Why don't you just wander around? And I'm like, yeah, that makes so much sense. I've been paying his grocery bills. So the attitude of just wander, see what you see. And so I'm like, cool. And I was supposed to take him today. I like arranged the day, but then I was like, no, sorry, bud. I've got too much work related stuff. I'm like, can we push that to tomorrow? And he's like, yeah. So I'm gonna go with him tomorrow. And then the next day, I think I have to take my youngest to the pool because he wants to go to the pool at least one more time before school. And then the next day, I go grocery shopping for the home. And then probably the day after that, I go to a home. I don't know. I'm uh, I'm losing it.
Listen,
Yeah.
you're doing great. You're
Yeah.
doing great. I also have an announcement
Hmm.
because this announcement is just going out. You may actually hear this before the announcement. Don't tell my agents. Um, it's official as of today. The Lauren Ash Call Me When You Get This tour is being announced. And I've been sitting on this for so long to the point that I was like trying to broker deals with my agents, being like, "Hey, but maybe we could like announce it a little bit sooner." And they're like, "No, there's a whole thing. There's a whole like everything has there's a
Of
reason."
course.
But anyway, it's been absolutely killing me. It's been killing me
Mm-hmm.
from the inside out. It's a
Mm-hmm.
Canadian tour. There's 10 dates in Ontario and
Oh,
Quebec. This is the first one.
Quebec. Can I
Yep,
just, did you literally pronounce it Quebec?
I did.
Bless you.
What should I
What a beautiful Canadian you are. Oh,
what
I'm
it,
blasphemous. I would say Quebec because
oh,
I'm a prairie. You know
right.
what I mean? But Quebec is beautiful. I love it.
I feel like it's technically Quebec, but like the
I
Quebecois.
still oh oh yes, of
But
course.
anyway, yes.
I was
Thank
just
you.
praising you for it
I
because
appreciate that. I appreciate
I
that.
it was a very mature Canadian thing to do.
Well, listen, which is interesting because I'm doing such a non-mature thing, which is hitting the road to play rock music for 2 months. But yeah, you can get tickets, laurenash.band. There is going to be VIP experiences at every
Oh,
show. So you get a VIP ticket, you get that add-on, then you can come take a picture with me. There'll be a
beautiful.
signed CD, physical. There will be a lanyard with a little
Beautiful.
VIP pass, and I'm working on a little bag as well. We're gonna hopefully get that together, but very excited. I obviously have never done any sort of like Comic-Con signings or anything like that. Like I did like one in-store outside Chicago. Like it's this is the chance. You want to come take a
Yeah.
picture, you want to come meet me, come hear the music. This is it. So laurenash.band, get your tickets now. They're going on sale tomorrow, September 3rd. So the announcement is September 2nd at 10 a.m.
Sure.
Eastern. They go on sale only to my fans. You need
Oh,
the pre-sale code in order to
oh, I
get them in
like
that
this.
first 24 hours. And then they
Right.
go on to the general public on Friday. Now, I don't know how stingy I'm supposed to be with the code. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go rogue and I'm not gonna check in. And I'm just
That
gonna tell people now.
that absolutely makes sense.
Right?
Yeah. I'm
The
gonna go
code?
rogue is Lauren Ash's
Yeah,
middle name.
because here's the thing. I've been sitting on this for so long and I'm so antsy and I'm so excited. And now I'm realizing in this minute, there was questions you should have asked, Lauren. There was questions you should have asked about like, how do I release the artist code? Can I give it to everybody? Can I give it to all of my friends that listen to the podcast? Like, how does this work? Didn't ask any of those questions. Now it's upon us. Again, should I send an email and ask and wait for a response? Probably. But again, this is rock and roll, baby. They have to expect that there's going to be a little bit of you know,
Mhm.
going rogue, doing our own thing. What have you?
In the land of rock and roll, I think rogue is pretty usual, I would say.
Rock and rogue? Didn't need to do it.
Oh, you did.
Um,
You did.
so listen, go to laurenash.band. You'll see the little portal there to get tickets for the show. And the artist presale code is call me. All caps, no
Beautiful.
spaces, call me.
Beautiful.
And then come over to my socials. I'll have a million posts about this. Let me know. Let me know what city that you're going to come see. Comment on the post about what city you'd like me to come to because that's how we get these things going. This is the first one. It's smallish. Um, it's in one kind of like concentrated location that we can all get to in a
Sure.
van. You know what I'm saying? But if you want me to come out west or come out east or come somewhere else, let us know. Hopefully
Yes.
this one, it's like in order for me to get this tour, those first couple shows had to go really well. And they did. So then I got the tour. So now this needs to go well so then I can take the next step. You know what I'm
Of
saying?
course.
And the UK it's still on my mind, still very much on my mind, the forefront of my mind. But
Of
again,
course.
I keep getting told, don't put the cart before the horse. You have to do well at one and then you'll get the next. So I hope to
Right.
see everybody in October and
Yes.
November in Ontario and Quebec. Quebec.
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. And listen, one other thing, on last week's episode of True Crime and Cocktails, I was grandstanding about how my album was going to be $4.99 on pre-sale, and then of course it
Mhm.
went up at the wrong price. It went up full price at $9.99. I shit a brick. As of this record, it's still
Yeah.
not fixed. But as of the day that this comes out, if it's not fixed, you'll find me at the bottom of a lake because I will have jumped in and just ended things. So
Is that one of the tour dates?
yeah, exactly. You join me in the Bay of Quinte. You'll find me. No,
That's
it's
beautiful
just I've
reference.
worked so hard and it's like when things are going
Yeah.
wrong, it's just so stressful. So anyway, as of now, God willing, it will have been fixed. So 4.99 again, almost half price over on iTunes. The link is in my bio on any social media. And I will post it to our socials. I didn't post it to our socials last week because it hadn't been fixed yet. And I was like,
Of
I want
course.
people to get it at the discount. That's the whole point to me,
Right.
you know? So that support would be amazing. Or just I've lost a week of pre-sale, folks. And to say that I'm upset, vomiting,
Mm.
mad, sad, frustrated, all of the above is all accurate. So if you have it in the kindness of your heart to give me a little purchase there, I just am really trying to hit a goal, really trying to get this album in that Billboard Top 200 for at
Of
least one.
course.
And that would be I know you all did it before, so let's do it again. And $5, that's a deal.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful.
Thank
Not
you.
the part of it not going up at the right price and the
It's
additional
like,
stress, but the
and it's
rest
one
of
of
it.
those things where when you have an issue, because I do it all myself. Like I just taught myself how to do all of this from the internet, right? So like I have a
Right.
team now that is doing things, but the workload is so much bigger because I have a team, if that makes any sense. So it's like it's not
Mhm.
gotten any easier. But anyway, when you have an issue with the distributor that I work with, I pay to be on a tier where it's like a bonus that you'll get a response to an email within 24 hours. And from what I've read
Oh, wow.
online, in comparison to the other distributors, this is actually quite fast. But here's the problem. You get a response in 24 hours, but then if you respond, it takes another 24 hours.
Of
You can't
course.
get into a back and forth. So I'm just like I'm hemorrhaging time. Like every day is just going down the drain. But anyway, so I was like, what did I do wrong? How did it go up at the wrong price? And it was like, well, you have to give some like I can't remember what they're called. Like you have to basically give some of the songs up front in order for it to be on pre-release at a discount. And I was like, but it doesn't say that anywhere. I thought it was just optional. I was just trying to build more buzz by not giving any songs when you first buy it.
Right.
Again, it just feels like that should be in the literature. Feels like that should be somewhere
Yes.
in the instructions.
Oh, I mean, if I take us back to you and me and a set of instructions trying to make iron-on designs with our favorite band members to make our own t-shirts
And
back in,
patches on backpacks.
yeah, and what was it, 96, 97,
Hmm.
something like that. Um, I'll never forget that it was Xerox paper.
Yeah, so folks, here's what happened. We found this amazing thing, which was this paper we could buy that you could then iron on to clothing, backpacks, whatever. And so we could
Yeah.
make our own patches. And we were so excited. So we bought a package of this. I'm sure it wasn't cheap. And we just started like choosing the photos that we wanted, of
Yep.
course, to iron onto things. And so we started printing them out. So we had this big pile of pictures on this paper, this special
Mhm.
paper. And then we're like, all right, let's go. Let's start cutting them out. Let's get ironing. And that's when we read the rest of the directions, which are like, you must iron it on within 30 seconds of it getting out of the printer. Like the ink can't dry in order for this
Right.
to work. And I don't think I need to tell all of you, the ink was dry.
I
It
remember
was
like
dry as a bone.
we'd read a chunk of the instructions and I just remember the words but first.
Yes,
And it
that
was
was
like
it.
halfway or down or something. And we were like, but first, you
Yeah.
can't do that.
You can't but first us at the end of the instructions.
No, no.
And I remember there was one that was like the last one we had printed, and it was a picture of Ryan Dahl from our favorite band, The Age of Electric. And I was like,
Yeah.
maybe this one's still wet enough. And so I put it on my backpack and I'm ironing like a mad woman. It wasn't. I remember there was like a half image of him that ended up transferring very odd and weird and
Yep.
wasn't at all what we wanted. And
Oh, I
yeah,
wrecked that t-shirt with that photo of Kurt Doll.
that's right.
It
And
was a
here's my
mangled
question.
mess.
Why didn't we go and buy more? Were we just so disillusioned with the product we abandoned the project?
Yeah. It
That was,
broke our spirits
it really did. I do remember that.
because we
That
were
was,
so excited. And then
yeah.
once it was a terrible disaster, we just immediately went like, I guess that's it. I assume maybe it was also a time issue. Maybe it was like nearing the end
Yeah.
of a trip and we were like, we don't have time.
Well, we also would have had to get a ride back to where? Staples? Where did we even get this? How did we
I
even
have
find it?
I have no memory
Neither do
of
I.
buying the paper. I only have the memory of us absolutely cocking up trying to use it. Because I close my eyes, I can see that picture. I can see the white t-shirt and the mangled picture in the middle that's supposed to be Kurt Doll and kind of was if you squint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that on page 2 of an instruction booklet you can have the instruction that is but first. Like after 15 steps, I don't think that when you turn a page, you know.
No, but this is taking me back to the seventh grade where my teacher, Mr. Craig, don't remember what I had for lunch, but I remember Mr. Craig.
Sure.
Um, he had us do a test, and it was a test, if you know what I mean. And the very first instruction said, read the entire thing before you start. And of course, half the people were like, I'm just going to get it started because it was timed and it was whoever gets finished. And if you read through the entire thing, the last question was write your name on the sheet and hand it in. So you really only had to do that. So people are handing it in, and other people are like, how are you going so fast? And that was supposed to teach us the life lesson of, you know, follow the instructions.
Mm.
That happened before. Oh, sorry, Mr. Craig.
Oh God, that was amazing. Can we pause for a quick second?
Of course.
On three. One, two, three. What you drinking over there?
I've just got a Pepsi slush.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I, as people know, killed a Diet Coke.
I love that for you.
Um, Prior to that, I slammed a whole Gatorade. And prior to that, I drank an entire Stanley's worth of water. Too much
Hydrated.
liquid. Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. But listen, I had to take a sneaky bathroom break there, folks. You won't know. You would never know. It would be completely covered up, but through the magic of edit. But yeah, no wonder I had to take a sneaky bathroom break.
Yeah.
Filled to the gills.
Maybe it's like a travel thing. Like
Mm.
maybe your body's feeling dehydrated
Here's the
from the
thing.
trip.
Yes, and I think that that is true. And I was making such an effort yesterday to try and not let myself get dehydrated. But I also hate having to pee a lot on a plane. So I
Mm,
bet you I was still not drinking enough. And yeah, I think today I'm really paying the price. I think my body's like, please, sir. I'm like a dry sponge.
I get that. I get that. I always try and put more liquid in, but then I'm like, then I'm just peeing more. And I know once I get used to it, I'll
Yes,
be peeing less, but it's getting to that point that
I get that.
yeah.
I get that. Well, listen, on that note, on yeah, so that's our pee schedule. Let's talk about a murder. Um, Today we're
Yeah.
discussing, of course, the case of Krystal Senyk. I don't believe that I know anything about this, so I'm going to get everybody up to speed along with me right now. In 1992, Krystal Senyk helped her friend Lynn escape from an abusive husband. Over the next few months, the two women made repeated calls to the police with concerns about Lynn's husband, but they were never taken seriously. Police were soon forced to face their own mistakes when Krystal's body was discovered outside her own home and her killer was nowhere to be found. So, what happened to Krystal Senyk? Was her killer ever caught? And did the police ever admit to any fault? Christy Oxborrow investigates.
We're gonna get mad.
I'm certain of it.
We're gonna get mad. I know. It's gonna be what it's gonna be. So disclaimer, this episode will contain mentions of intimate partner violence, sexual assault, and suicide. So trigger warning for those who need it. Krystal Nicole Senyk was born April 13th, 1962, in Ontario, Canada.
Oh,
Her parents, Philip Senyk and Vera Campbell, separated when Krystal was young, and 6 years after Krystal was born, her mother had a son named Gord. Krystal and Gord were raised on a horse farm in North Pelham, Ontario. Is that how you pronounce that?
I would agree. Yes, I would think so.
Okay. It's about 24 kilometers west of Niagara Falls.
Oh,
Krystal earned a degree from Brock University, which is in St. Catharines, Ontario, which is home to Stony Lake Entertainment, the production company which distributed the 2014 Nicolas Cage movie Left Behind.
incredible.
I stumbled upon that one and was delighted because now not only is it my goal to sneak Nicolas Cage in there, it's my goal to do it at a point where you're not going to see it coming.
100%.
So it can't be as simple as like this movie starring this person who was with this. I'll do it if I have to, but if I can find something else, more ideal. In 1985, while attending Brock University, Krystal met a woman named Lynn. Lynn prefers to not be publicly identified, so I'm purposely leaving out her maiden name. So Lynn appears to be from Ontario, but in 1981 she started spending summers in the Yukon, which is the northwesternmost province in Canada, located right beside Alaska. While Lynn was working at a farm in Ontario, she met Suzanne, who was heading to the Yukon for a summer job. Lynn and Suzanne became close friends, and Lynn decided to go with her to work for the summer. They went back and forth for a few years until 1986 when Lynn met Ronald Bax, a sculptor, taxidermist, and wild and wilderness guide. Lynn chose to stay in the Yukon where she got a job at a daycare. She and Ron got married and had two sons, approximately in 1987 and 1989. In the late 80s, Krystal went to visit Lynn, and while she was there, she was offered a job as an engineer for the city of Whitehorse, which is the provincial capital. From the best I can tell, Krystal moved there around 1988, where she built her own cabin on Tagish Road, not far from Lynn and Ron's place near Carcross, which is about 72 kilometers south of Whitehorse. And not only did Krystal build her own place, she also won arm wrestling championships and was the women's flour packing champion at the Yukon Sourdough Rendezvous Festival. And for those who are like, run that by me one more time, apparently, at this sourdough festival, which takes place in the middle of winter, people strap heavy bags full of flour, sometimes multiple bags, to their backs, and then they have to walk a 50-foot track. This is meant to reenact the weight that people carried during the gold rush days when they crossed between Dawson City, Yukon, and Alaska. I don't know how heavy it was when Krystal was the women's champion. If it's any indication, the top three women in 2019 carried between 365 and 485 pounds.
Wow.
The top three men ranged between 520 pounds and 685 pounds. A man named Richard Chippett set a record in 1988 by carrying a whopping 956 pounds. His record still stands today.
Wowzer.
He tried a couple years later to beat the record with, I believe, 1,002 pounds, but he didn't quite make it to the finish line. He said he was inches away,
Ugh.
but just couldn't make it any further. I'd be lucky to walk 50 feet with like an additional 20 pounds.
Oh,
So
yeah.
well done altogether. But flour packing champion, not something I'd ever heard of. Um, but I went down the rabbit hole on flour packing previous championships. Ah, so since Krystal spent so much time with Lynn, she quickly became friends with Suzanne, and at first she became really good friends with Lynn's husband, Ron. But early in their friendship, Ron and Krystal went on a hunting trip together to the Northwest Territories. Ron was a hunting guide, Krystal was an avid grizzly hunter, so it didn't seem weird that the two of them would go, just the two of them. When Suzanne asked Lynn how she felt about her husband and her best friend going away together for days, Lynn said, quote, "I trust Krystal." Interesting to me
Yeah.
that she didn't immediately said, "I trust them both," but it was specifically, "I trust her." But something clearly went down on that trip because when Krystal and Ron returned, they were no longer getting along. They just started saying they absolutely hated each other. And now
Hmm.
I have nothing to base this on, so I am only speculating. But if I had to guess, I would suggest maybe Ron crossed a line and tried something with Krystal, and she turned him down. Again, only speculating.
Hmm.
But whatever the issue was between them, within a year, Ron outright banned Krystal from coming to their house, even though she was his wife's best friend. People said that he was intensely jealous of how close Lynn and Krystal were. Lynn said Ron became controlling, jealous, and unstable. Some have questioned whether his change was caused by the amount of hours he spent in an unventilated basement making sculptures using really potent chemicals. No specific details were given, but Ron was described as abusive. When Ron started teaching his sons, who were under the age of 6 at the time, to say things like, and this is a quote, Krystal is a fuck. Imagine a 3-year-old saying that.
Oh
Um,
boy.
Lynn decided it was time to go. She took the boys and left on December 26, 1991. Krystal picked them up and drove them to her house. Ron was devastated and decided that the only person to blame in this entire situation was Krystal. Krystal told police that Ron had been harassing her, including repeated phone calls, outright stalking, and then whenever they'd see each other in town, he would just glare at her with this like death stare. And it happened a lot because at the time, the population of Carcross where they were living was less than 200 people. So they ran into each other quite often. Krystal asked police for help multiple times. They told her she was overreacting. One officer even had the audacity to suggest that the next time Ron showed up uninvited at Krystal's house, stalking, she should invite him in for tea so they can have a talk. The officer said, quote, that will calm him down. Um, I can't imagine a more insane or dangerous thing to suggest to a woman regarding her stalker, especially one who is incredibly angry and blames her for his marriage ending. On February 14th, 1992, Suzanne went with Lynn to Lynn's house to pick up a few things. They chose a time that Ron would not be there, but of course, while they're there, Ron shows up anyway and starts screaming at Lynn. He threw things at the women. When they got into a vehicle to get away from him, he started banging on the car when they were trying to leave. Suzanne was in shock. She said she had absolutely never seen that side of Ron before. She questioned how long that Lynn had been putting up with it. Ron's behavior continued to escalate, and no matter where Lynn went to stay, he would follow her and sit outside the house for hours in freezing cold temperatures. And we're talking the Yukon, so we're talking, and I don't have a conversion, but Celsius, we're talking like minus 36, minus 40 Celsius.
Minus 40 is where they meet. So
Oh, well,
minus 40 Celsius is minus 40 Fahrenheit.
I should have just gone with minus 40 and then not even said, and then it would have gone. That would have made me look intelligent.
Well,
No,
listen, still works.
I also made a comment about having a Coke problem earlier and meant the soda. So there goes that might look intelligent thing. It's fine. I don't need to be. So Lynn wanted to serve Ron with papers regarding the custody of their 2 sons, but she was concerned about how he might react. So, for the sake of her own safety, Lynn and their sons went to a transition house on February 18th, nearly 8 weeks after Lynn and Ron first separated. Suzanne, who had years of professional experience with cases involving intimate partner violence, stated she was concerned for Krystal's safety because she believed that the move would cause Ron's anger to increase. Suzanne suggested Krystal leave town for a while, and since Krystal was becoming more and more distressed with the entire situation, Krystal agreed and she went to California for a week. She returned February 29th and helped Lynn and her sons move into a rental property. She even stayed overnight to help them get settled. The following day, Ron showed up with Lynn, or while Lynn was unpacking, and he demanded to take the kids to an air show. Since there was no legal custody agreement yet, Ron was supposed to go through their mutual friend Suzanne to make visitation arrangements, but he refused. And since there was no official agreement in place, Lynn agreed to let Ron take the kids. The air show was 3 hours long. Ron returned with the boys after just 45 minutes. He then started a huge fight in front of the children, who were just 3 and 5 at the time. He told Lynn he was going to see the children whenever he wanted, and if she ever refused, she wouldn't get to see them at all. He told Lynn that he had dropped his lawyer, and told her she wouldn't be needing one either. And I know I'm not a professional, and one could argue that Ron was simply saying they don't need lawyers because they're going to get back together. But to me, I see it as more of a threat. To me, it sounds like Ron is saying Lynn won't need a lawyer because she's going to be dead. Or she won't see her kids at all because either she's going to be dead or he's planning to abduct them. Maybe I'm just paranoid. Maybe we've been doing this show for too long, but that's the way I saw it. Well, Lynn absolutely saw it as a threat. And since Ron was also screaming in her face while gripping on to their 5-year-old at the time, Lynn just said, we're cutting this. Done. Like, you've got to get out. So she told Ron to leave. On his way out, he glanced back at the house and made eye contact with Krystal, and he flipped her the bird. Or simply put, he extended his middle finger at her. I honestly didn't know how far reaching the expression flipped the bird is. So
Great question.
I had to cover my bases. I don't know. I don't know if it's a generational thing or a geographical thing. Could go either way. So at this point, Lynn is feeling threatened. And according to Section 264.11 of the Canadian Criminal Code, it is illegal to knowingly utter, convey, or cause any person to receive a threat to cause death or bodily harm. Well, Krystal took Lynn and the boys back to the transition house, and Lynn contacted the White Horse Police to tell them about this perceived threat. She added that Ron had previously threatened to take his own life any time that Lynn threatened to leave him. The officer said, nothing we can do. He said, police don't get involved in domestic disputes until someone has broken the law. His example, if Ron maybe violated a restraining order. But there wasn't a restraining order at the time because despite Lynn trying to get one for a week, her lawyer still hadn't bothered to return her calls. The officer said that he could talk to Ron, but that likely wouldn't do any good anyway because, quote, talking didn't do much good in these cases. Couple of things. One, uttering a threat is absolutely a crime, and therefore, yes, the police can do something about it. And two, if you, as a police officer, think that a man is so angry and violent that he's beyond talking to, then maybe, just maybe, you should make it a priority to find him before he does something dangerous. And while the police were ignoring Krystal and Lynn's concerns, Ron reached out to Suzanne because he didn't have a lot of close friends. During the call, Ron told Suzanne, and this is a quote, "The hunt is on. The hunt begins tomorrow. Oh, forget it. I'm on my way." Then he hung up. The hunt is on is not only terrifying, but sounds like another threat. Krystal told the police she was scared to go home, so she asked to have an officer follow her home and check her cabin before she went inside. Since Krystal lived about an hour away, the officer said no, it wasn't part of his job. Krystal then suggested an officer from the Carcross station be sent to her house. That was only 13 minutes away from her house. Um, she was told, well, those officers are busy. But this officer said he would drive around looking for Ron, but that's likely not going to do anything. The officer knew what vehicle Ron had, so he said, don't worry, I'll be on the lookout for a brown truck. Well, Lynn and Krystal pointed out that night Ron was last seen driving a blue Ford Tempo. The officer wrote that down. That's the only note that he wrote throughout this entire conversation. Since Krystal was uneasy about heading home, she made plans to stay with Suzanne. However, she changed her mind in the end and just decided she wanted to go home. Between helping Lynn and being in California, Krystal hadn't been home in nearly 3 weeks, and she was really just anxious to get back. It was the middle of winter, and when it gets so cold out there, you have to run water through the pipes, or else they're going to freeze and crack and cause all kinds of problems. So she just wanted to go home. The staff at the transition house offered Krystal a room for the night, but she politely declined. Krystal left around 9:30 p.m. and stopped by Suzanne's house. She left Suzanne's at 10:45 and drove the 50 minutes to her own cabin. It was estimated that she likely arrived between 11:30 and midnight. The next morning, Suzanne called Krystal's house but got no answer. She then called the federal land claims office where Krystal worked, but they said Krystal hadn't arrived. Suzanne called back 15 minutes later, but Krystal still wasn't there. So Suzanne called the RCMP and asked for someone to go check Krystal's house. The two local officers, because again, Carcross was a small place, so only two officers there, but they were busy. So they suggested Suzanne go check on Krystal herself. A person is unaccounted for. The same person who is being harassed by an angry, unstable man who owns a lot of guns. And you suggest that her friend go to the person's house alone? The request is insane to me. It's just so absolutely clear that they didn't think Ron was a threat, despite at least 3 different women telling them that he was. But when Suzanne tried to leave her house, she found her car wouldn't start, so she was stuck at home. An hour later, the police called Suzanne and told her, stay there, we're going to pick you up and bring you to the station, which felt odd. That same morning, with no knowledge of Krystal's potential disappearance, Lynn and an advocate from the transition house went to Lynn's lawyer's office to get a restraining order. The lawyer had the audacity to question if the restraining order was even necessary because Ron's lawyer didn't believe he was dangerous. Lynn stood her ground, and her lawyer made a court appointment for later that day. While the police officer from the night before had told Lynn that, well, the police can't do anything about Ron, the advocate for the transition house was like hell they can't. So, after the lawyer's office, Lynn and the advocate went to the RCMP to press charges against Ron for uttering threats. And even though Lynn, Krystal, and Suzanne had all previously contacted the police with complaints about Ron on more than one occasion, somehow there was not a single file about him at the police station.
Oh, fantastic.
In fact, there weren't any records of any phone calls made about Ron at all. Not with the Carcross police or the White Horse police. So good to know the police were taking it seriously right from the start. Lynn told the police she was concerned because Ron had recently talked about taking his own life, and he told her he would do it and then leave a note for their kids saying, Mommy killed me.
Sweet Jesus.
Yeah. Lynn mentioned that she had been so concerned about Ron that she contacted his brother in Ontario. The brother came and visited for a week and told Lynn he read a book about divorce. And he said a lot of men go through this kind of thing when their wives leave them. Ron's brother said the best thing Lynn could do, leave the kids with Ron and go on a holiday.
That is, I think we should retitle this episode Gaslighting in the North. Like, it's
Yeah, oh, it's
crazy.
brutal. Um,
Jesus.
so Ron says he's going to kill himself and make the kids think their mother did it. And the brother thinks, yeah, the kids should go stay with Ron alone.
Great point.
I won't belabor Ron's actions towards Lynn, but not only was there verbal violence towards her, he also stalked her, pushed her. If he saw her in a car, he would physically drag her out of a car. He was incredibly aggressive towards her, but just no one took her concerns seriously. During the conversation, the police officer randomly asked Lynn to draw a diagram of their house, including the front yard and any entrances to the property off Tagish Road. While she was doing this, Lynn said she started overhearing officers in the station say things like 10 men and police dog, but she had no idea what was going on at that point. The officer told Lynn that she and the advocate had to stay put, and another staff member from the transition house brought Lynn's sons to the police station. At this point, Lynn is like, I don't understand what's going on. The staff member is like, do you know what's happening? Lynn's like, I do not. And then the staff member's like, well, there's been a murder, and the police believe Ron is responsible. The victim, of course, was Krystal Senyk. She was described as dynamic, driven, vivacious, smart, and well liked. Krystal was just 29 at the
Oof.
time of her death. Krystal's body was found at the door of her cabin around 11 a.m. She had been shot once at close range with a high caliber rifle. Police believe that given Ron's history of anger towards Krystal and his recent threats, that Ron was the likely suspect. Hours before Krystal's murder, while she was at the transition house with Lynn, one of the employees leaving for the night noticed a man matching Ron's description skulking near the building. Once the employee got home, she called and told the staff on duty about it. They responded by turning off the lights and closing the blinds.
Oh, right.
I'm, yeah, I'm surprised they didn't call the police, but since the police have proved multiple times in this case that they couldn't be bothered, I doubt anything would have changed. And speaking of shady actions on the police's part, Krystal's uncle, Paul Senyk, spoke with police on the phone following Krystal's death. The officer told him that they were so angry about what had happened to Krystal that while waiting outside Ron's house, local police shot it up because they're, big, tough men. Um, but when Paul drove past the house after Krystal's funeral, he said there weren't any bullet holes at all. So he confronted the police about it, and they said, well, we didn't think you'd actually check.
Oh my God. Jesus.
It is insane. So at least three separate women contacted the police over safety concerns about one man, and not once did an officer log the complaint in any way. Authorities not believing women is just so incredibly exhausting at this point. We've heard about it so many times on this show. But just a couple more examples for you, just to remind how widespread and troubling this problem is. In Toronto, Ontario, Canada, August 2022, Daniela Malia called the police to report her ex-boyfriend, Dylan Dowman, had been threatening and harassing her. The lead officer who responded to the call said it was simply a case of he said, she said.
Oh,
He then had the audacity to tell Daniela she could be charged with an offense if he discovered she was lying.
That's disgusting.
The officer, better known as Constable Anson Alfonso, then called Dylan and told him he needed to stop contacting Daniela. He told Dylan to contact the police if Daniela ever calls him again, and then they will investigate her for harassment. 3 days later, Dylan shot Daniela in an underground parking garage. She was just 23 at the time of her death. Dylan was found guilty of first-degree murder and given a life sentence, which in Canada automatically means no parole for at least 25 years. Anson Alfonso pleaded guilty to one count of misconduct and was found guilty of insubordination. His police rank was reduced, but he has the chance to earn it back with a basic yearly evaluation.
Oh, great.
A second officer who was also involved pleaded guilty to neglect of duty and was demoted one rank for a year. Both officers failed to arrest Dylan for uttering threats, which may have saved Daniela's life.
Mm-hmm.
And because I said worldwide, in Romania, in July 2019, a 15-year-old girl named Alexandra called police 3 times to report that she had been abducted. After 12 hours, police were finally able to find the house where Alexandra had been taken. But for some reason, once they got there, they suddenly decided they had to wait for a search warrant to enter the building, even though it's not necessary in emergencies. They waited another 7 hours before entering the house. By the time they entered the house, the only thing they found were remains, which were mostly burned. It is believed the remains belonged to Alexandra. A 65-year-old mechanic was arrested for her murder. He also admitted to abducting and murdering an 18-year-old girl who'd been missing for 3 months. He has since been sentenced to 30 years in prison. Then in New Mexico in April 2023, police did a welfare check on an 83-year-old woman named June Ann Fannell. She was bedridden and said she was afraid of her caretaker, 86-year-old Henry Cardona. Henry outright told the police she needs to go for her own safety, get her the hell out of here. The officers then left. On their body cameras, you can hear June Ann say, "Please don't leave me," to which Henry responds, "You're fine until I kill you."
Wow.
4 hours later, police were called back to the residence to discover that June Ann had been fatally shot. Henry pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter and was sentenced to just 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah. The police issued a statement saying the victim did not appear to fear for her safety, so the officers had no probable cause to believe that a violent act was imminent. June Ann literally begged you not to leave, and Henry openly said she needs to go for her own safety. But of course, the police weren't at fault, she said sarcastically. In Michigan in June 2022, Tyranny Savage filed for a personal protection order against her estranged husband, Beau, claiming he'd recently bought a gun and had repeatedly threatened to harm her and himself. The judge denied Tyranny's request, stating insufficient evidence. Just days after her request was denied, Tyranny called 911 twice to say her estranged husband was harassing her. No one followed up with her. 2 weeks later, Beau went to the house where he fatally shot 30-year-old Tyranny, Tyranny's 58-year-old mother, Kim, and Tyranny's 13-year-old son, Dayton, before turning the gun on himself.
Mm-hmm.
Beau was 35 at the time. Again, women's pleas being ignored by authorities before the women are brutally murdered is heartbreaking and enraging. And while the cases are difficult to hear, I only bring them up to point out not only how common it is, but also the fact that it happens everywhere. I could go on with countless examples. We don't have time. One final example, though, because it brings us right back to the Yukon. Donna Ryan ran a placer mining company in a small secluded area near the Indian River, about 80 kilometers south of Dawson City. Placer mining is a technique that uses water and gravity to extract minerals from sand and gravel. By 1985, Donna had been running that camp for about 8 years. In the spring of 1985, Donna's estranged husband, Jack Edgar, showed up at the camp and threatened to kill her. The couple had been estranged for 2 years. Donna went to the local police to get a peace bond, which is like a restraining order. The police told her, sorry, nothing we can do. Months later in August, while Donna's sister, Artis Conlon, was visiting from Edmonton, Jack returned to the camp with a friend, and the two of them shot and killed both Donna and her sister, and then abandoned their bodies on a secluded mining road. Donna was just 44 at the time of her death. Her sister Artis was 47. 56-year-old Jack and his 42-year-old accomplice were both charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Jack was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to life with a minimum of 15 years. He denies the crime. In the case of Krystal Senyk, we know that multiple people went to the police with concerns about Ronald Bax, and not one of those officers made any sort of note or record of the complaint. And what's worse is when Krystal asked for a police officer to check her home before she went there, she was told no. I understand her home was far away for that particular officer, and it might not have been his job, but she was scared and he didn't attempt to help her in any way. Coroner Larry Campbell conducted a judgment of inquiry into the case to determine whether the police were in any way at fault for what happened. He released his report in June 1993, which stated, quote, "When the citizen is in a position of safety, as was Miss Senyk, it would have been irresponsible to take her from the safety and expose her to a perceived danger." Basically, what Larry's saying is that at the time of Krystal's concern for her safety, she was at the transition house, which the officer believed was safe. He's claiming the only reason the officer wouldn't go search her home was because the house was seen as danger, and the officer refused to take Krystal to a place that was possibly dangerous. Which is interesting because when Suzanne called the police to do a wellness check on Krystal, they told Suzanne they were busy and suggested she go look for Krystal herself.
Right.
But but I thought the police determined Krystal's house was a dangerous place. So why would they send a civilian to a place that they had already deemed dangerous? The officer said that Krystal had been offered a room at the transition house for the night, but she chose to leave, which kind of sounds like the officer saying it's Krystal's own fault for leaving. Um, and maybe I'm reading too much into that. But how long was she supposed to stay there? Because I guarantee if Ron wanted Krystal dead, he would have just waited for her to return home. I think her returning home that night didn't make a difference. If she'd waited and returned home the next night, I just think she would have survived another day. I
Yeah.
just, I think he had it in his head. He knew what he was going to do, and the police did not try and stop him, sorry. The coroner concluded that the police did not act improperly in Krystal's case, but pointed out there was a problem because the officer that Krystal spoke to admitted he had absolutely no plan to follow up on Krystal's concerns. You know how he said, "Oh, I'll drive around looking for Ron and all that." No, because he didn't make a note of it. So why would he bother remembering it?
Right.
To me, again, not a professional, feels like neglect of duty. He knew she feared for her life and he admitted to having zero plans of looking into it. Absolute garbage behavior. But despite ignoring all the initial concerns, police knew the moment that Krystal's body was discovered, that Ronald Bax was likely responsible. They believe Ron waited outside Krystal's cabin and then shot her as soon as she arrived, likely between 11:30 and midnight. And since police couldn't find any sign of Ron, they believed it was possible he was still a threat. So they took 16 people into protective custody, including Lynn and Ron's two sons. Following the discovery of the body, police searched Ron's property but didn't find any sign of Ron. And I'm so sorry to say this, brace yourselves. They found Ron's dog, which appeared to have been shot. Police believe Ron was responsible. They couldn't go into the house without an emergency response team. And at the time, the Yukon did not have an emergency response team. So they had to wait for one to come from British Columbia. The team was called around 12:30. They didn't arrive until 6. Once they finally arrived, the house was tear gassed, and then officers went in, but there was no sign of Ron in the building. Multiple guns were seized, but none were determined to be the murder weapon. Lynn was eventually taken to the house to try and identify any missing items. The search for Ron included 25 to 30 police officers, helicopters, airplanes, and a police dog named Nine.
Cute.
Yeah. Um, they searched cabins, vehicles, the surrounding wilderness. They went through all airline and ferry manifests, but there was just no sign of Ron anywhere. He was described as a white male, 30 years old, about 5'7", 165 pounds, with blonde hair and blue eyes. He has a tattoo of a winged horse on his upper right arm. He sometimes went under the alias Spencer Clark or Spencer Jones. A forensic psychologist made a profile of Ron based on interviews with his friends and family. They said he had a dislike for the police and a history of occasional cocaine and alcohol abuse. They described him as extremely dangerous, likely well armed, and that if cornered, Ron will likely shoot at police, take his own life, or both. The psychologist said Ron um, seemed to believe that he had nothing left to lose, and his normal inhibitors to aggression were likely low or non existent. It was said a manhunt would likely trigger Ron's survival instinct. On March 5th, police officially issued a warrant for Ron's arrest on the charge of first-degree murder. On March 13th, the manhunt was downsized to just a handful of officers. At the time, police announced they had 3 theories into Ron's disappearance. 1, he hiked into the bush and took his own life. 2, he hiked into the bush and just hid there indefinitely. Or 3, he just fled the area entirely. Is it possible that after the murder, Ron took his own life? People closest to him say that prior to the murder, he was despondent, he was broke, his truck, wallet, and most of his outdoor gear was left behind, but some of the outdoor gear was said to be missing. Police said at the house they found what could be construed as a suicide note, but they've never released a copy or mentioned what it says, so who knows? It was also believed that the death of Ron's dog was a sign that Ron took his own life because he had told people he never wanted his dog to end up in a shelter. And while that could mean he killed the dog because he knew he was going to die, it could also mean he killed the dog because he knew he was leaving the house and not coming back. Since some of the outdoor gear was missing, it's possible Ron took off into a deep part of the woods where no one could find him. He was a highly skilled outdoorsman, so it's more than possible he could survive in the woods for a considerable amount of time. So, did he remain in the woods for the rest of his life? I mean, as of this record, his body has never been found. Although it should be noted, there are hundreds of abandoned mines throughout the Yukon, with at least 50 within a 2-hour radius of Carcross. Is it possible he made his way into a mine, hoping his body would never be found? Or is it possible he stayed in the woods until he felt safe and then made his way to another province or another country? On March 11th, 9 days after the body was found, a truck driver says he saw a light on the other side of Toushai Lake, which is about 40 kilometers south of Carcross. At the time, there were no cabins or structures on that side of the lake. So is it possible the light was just like a reflection of something? Is it possible the light was a fire that Ron was using to maybe keep warm or cook food? Or did Ron just leave town immediately and never look back? Krystal's cabin was roughly 105 kilometers north of Skagway, Alaska, which is the closest American city. At the time, border guards themselves admitted they rarely noted license plate numbers of people entering the country. They rarely checked passports. So it's more than possible that Ron was able to cross the border into Alaska and then take a ferry down to Washington, or maybe he simply went south to British Columbia or east to the Northwest Territories. Maybe once he got far enough away, he spent some time earning money and then just kept moving on. Between the time of the murder and the time the body was discovered, Ron had nearly 12 hours to get a head start. So he could have covered a considerable amount of distance in that time. Shortly before the murder, Lynn said Ron received a package from his artistic mentor who lived in Spain. Lynn said she didn't open it, but from the size and the weight of it, she said it could possibly have been a gun. Did this mentor, who Ron met years prior at a trade show, did he send him the murder weapon? Is it possible the mentor gave Ron a place to lie low? Or did someone else help Ron escape? It was said there was a group of bikers living near the Kukasoon Lake, which is located between Carcross and Whitehorse, and the bikers were described as raging misogynists. Now, when Lynn first left Ron, he was so angry and fully blamed Krystal for it, which get bent, sir. Um, the only one you have to blame is yourself, but neither here nor there. So he was angry, and his way of getting back at her was to spread rumors that Lynn and Krystal were having an intimate relationship. Well, it turns out that these particular bikers were enraged at the thought that Krystal had interfered with Ron's marriage. So some have suggested that they would have been willing to help Ron leave the area, or maybe even hide him from police until he was able to leave the area on his own. Now, regarding Ron's rumors, we don't know how she identified. She was never public about it. Um, Maybe she was gay and Ron knew about it. And so he wasn't just an abusive asshole, but he was also a homophobe. It's also possible Krystal wasn't gay and Ron just used it as an excuse to blame his shitty behavior on someone else. I just personally think that Ron skipped town after the murder. I think if he was going to take his own life, he would have dramatically done so at Krystal's cabin. I think he hiked out of the area or got a ride to the border and just headed into the United States. Police sent out wanted posters with Ron's photo. There were sightings of him in Los Angeles, Alaska, Michigan. Uh, in Michigan, Ron does have a sister who lives there. She denies having seen him. My favorite is a police constable in Quebec, sorry, Quebec, was convinced he had seen Ron, and this doesn't sound real, on an episode of Oprah Winfrey. I somehow don't believe that sighting was taken seriously. Um, in the summer of 2008, a woman in Whitehorse received a call from her brother Bob in Ontario. Bob said he was staying at a campground on Lake Huron near the Michigan border where he met a man named Henry. According to Bob, Henry was waiting at the campground for his visa so he could enter the United States. Henry had a girlfriend named Linda who was living in Michigan and would travel to the campground every weekend to see him. Henry said once he got the visa, he and Linda were heading to Florida. Bob described Henry as an experienced woodsman with a northern Canadian accent. Henry once said he used to live in the Yukon in a small town near Whitehorse. Bob couldn't remember the exact name, but he said it started with a letter C. Well, there are a few small towns in the area that start with the letter C, but they're all pretty much abandoned mining towns with no current population. And the only town with a C letter name with a population is Carcross. Bob said Henry bragged about his skill as a woodsman and said in the early 90s he helped someone escape the Yukon after a bad situation. Once Bob mentioned his sister lived in Whitehorse, Henry suddenly became less interested in talking to Bob, and within days, Henry left the campground before his visa had happened. Bob's sister, for whatever reason, didn't contact the police about this lead until 4 years later. When police contacted the campground, they initially withheld the names of previous guests due to privacy concerns, but when the police were finally able to go through records, there was no Henry or Linda on the list. Bob described Henry as a white male, approximately 6 feet tall, maybe in his 70s. Ron Bax was a white male, 5'7", and in 2008, he would have been 46. So, unless Bob was a bit off on the height and the age, it's possible Henry wasn't Ron. I mean, it could have been. Um, but is it possible that Henry was the person who helped Ron escape? Because I find it super suspicious he left so soon after learning that Bob had an actual connection to that area. A second potential sighting was in Mississippi in 2015. A woman named Sandy said her then husband met a man at a bar, and for unknown reason, just a couple of drunk dudes, I guess, he allowed the man to move into their home because the man had nowhere else to go. Just a stranger welcoming into your home. That makes sense that a man would say, "Come on in, what's the harm?" And a woman would go, "What are we doing?"
Yeah, yeah.
So Sandy said the man went by the name Terry Clinton Hall, but he chose to be called Clinton. He claimed he had no ID. Well, at some point during his stay, Sandy was in the room that Clinton was staying in. She found ID that had the name Ronald Jeffrey Bax. So she Googled the name, and Ron's wanted poster came up. So she immediately contacted Crime Stoppers. Mississippi police questioned Clinton, who claimed to have no knowledge of Ron or the ID. By the time he was brought in, that ID mysteriously disappeared. Clinton was fingerprinted. The fingerprints did not match the set that the police had on file for Ron, which they apparently got in Ontario in 1983. It should be noted Clinton's hands had suffered significant burns, but the police said the burns did not affect his fingerprints. Clinton was released, and shortly after, he skipped town without so much as a goodbye or a thank you to Sandy and her husband, who had allowed this man to stay in their home for 2 years.
That's wild.
Other people who met Clinton while he was staying there said he had a northern Canadian accent, and his hobbies were taxidermy and sculpture, which sounds a lot like Ron. Clinton had told people he was from Alaska, and he was biking from Alaska to Florida. And when I say biking, I mean a bicycle, not a motorcycle. Alaska to Florida is approximately, I don't know, 5,000 miles? Clinton told people he originally took the ferry from Alaska to Washington, which sounds almost like he was purposely avoiding Canada. Maybe because he had something to hide or didn't want to go through a country's border. Only speculating. Clinton was fingerprinted in March 2015. According to those fingerprints, Clinton had previously been arrested in 1980 and 1992 in Washington. So then I wondered, maybe the prints the police have for Ron Bax were wrong? But the FBI used facial comparison software at their digital evidence lab in May 2021 and determined Clinton Hall and Ron Bax were absolutely two different people. So, with very few leads in the case, Krystal's father, Philip, pushed to have Krystal's case aired on Unsolved Mysteries. Now, at this point, it was about like 1994-ish. And at the time, Unsolved Mysteries had an estimated audience of 22 million per episode. The show wanted to do a full segment on the case, but they needed consent from everyone involved. And while Lynn had originally said yes in March 1995, she changed her mind and said no. Krystal's mother, Vera, was so upset that Lynn had said no to Unsolved Mysteries that Lynn and Vera got into some sort of altercation. I don't know what went down. I know it had to be resolved in court.
Oh,
With
wow.
without Lynn's permission, Unsolved Mysteries ended up making Krystal's case a short 90-second special bulletin that aired December 1st, 1995. Um, but when the company FilmRise purchased the rights to re-release the classic episodes on a streaming service, the special bulletin was excluded from all of this. So it only aired the once, but that single viewing brought in more than 130 tips. Unfortunately, none of the leads panned out. It's just such a shame that a full segment wasn't done. Maybe shoving Ron's face out there could have led to him being found. I don't know why she said no. I can only assume she was trying to distance her sons from the horrific thing that their father had done. I'm just surprised she wasn't willing to do whatever it took to help solve the murder of her best friend. But she must have had her reasons, so, no shade. In 2009, the RCMP had a forensic artist create two composite sketches of what Ron might have looked like at the time. They are, of course, posted in our case file on Instagram and Facebook at True Crime and Cocktails. I almost forgot what it was called. Wowzer. I haven't been sleeping. Um, at the time that the photos were released, police announced they believed there is a 70% chance that Ron Bax took his own life immediately after killing Krystal. I don't know how they reached that percentage. It just kind of feels like they were like, here's photos of him. We weren't able to find him. So that has to mean he's dead. It's just like, well, you guys also dropped the ball repeatedly. So I'm not surprised you didn't find him. Plus, he had a massive head start. But at that point, it had been 17 years since Ron Bax had been seen. After that length of time, it almost feels impossible for the case to be solved, which is, disheartening at best. So to give us hope that solving a 30+ year case can be done, I have a few examples for you. Um, Now, this was an update from a previous episode we did. I genuinely don't remember if I gave the update or not. It's in, it's out.
I
It
get
just
it.
is what it is. In episode 122, we talked about 25-year-old Mary Schley, who was sexually assaulted and stabbed while hitchhiking to an art show in Chicago in February 1974. Well, 50 years later, in November 2024, DNA from a hat found near her body was officially identified the killer through genetic genealogy as 84-year-old John Miller. He admitted he was a truck driver at the time and he'd offered Mary a ride. He asked her for sex. She said no. So he assaulted and stabbed her and left her body at an intersection in Springbrook, Wisconsin. Miller pleaded no contest to the charges and was sentenced to life in prison. May he rot. In January 1956, the bodies of 18-year-old Lloyd Dwayne Bogle and 16-year-old Patricia Kalitsky were found in Great Falls, Montana. Both had been shot in the head, and Patricia had been sexually assaulted. The case went cold for 65 years until genetic genealogy determined the DNA found at the scene belonged to a man named Kenneth Gould. Unfortunately, Gould passed away in 2007, so he wasn't uh, able to be charged, but at least we know the result. In June 1967, in Bristol, England, 75-year-old Louisa Dunn was raped and sexually assaulted in her own home. Raped and murdered in her own home. Police found a clear palm print at the scene, so they checked the palm prints of every male between the ages of 15 and 60 within a 1.5 mile radius. That meant approximately 19,000 men were searched. No one was a match. 58 years later, the palm print was determined to belong to Ryland Headley, who had been 34 at the time of the crime. In June 2025, Headley was given a life sentence for Louisa's death. Unfortunately, Headley was 92 at the time, so he's not going to spend nearly as much time in jail as he deserves. Headley had previously been convicted on two separate rape charges in 1977. At the time, he was sentenced to life in prison, but his sentence got reduced from life to 7 years because his lawyers successfully argued that Headley wasn't some sort of psychopath. The rapes only occurred because Headley was in an unhappy marriage to an ambitious, demanding wife. I wish that I was kidding, but I am not. This piece of garbage raped two women and somehow got his sentence lowered to just 7 years because his wife was demanding? It's enraging. I'm relieved he's gonna die in jail. As a side note, absolutely fuck you to the lawyers who got the sentence reduced by arguing that this monster's wife was in any way responsible for his crimes. And while this section was meant to give us hope that criminals can be caught even after decades, it has quickly turned me into just simply being enraged. Like how enraged I am about how many times the police failed not only Krystal, but also Lynn and Suzanne. All three women said Ron was a threat. Not one police officer believed them until Ron committed murder. Even Lynn's lawyer failed them because he said he didn't believe a restraining order was necessary because, well, Ron's lawyer said it's not necessary. And look, while I don't think a restraining order would have prevented what happened, I have to ask, why does it matter what Ron's lawyer thought? Lynn thought Ron was a threat to himself and to others. How is that not enough to immediately start looking into a restraining order? What is it going to take for women to be heard and believed? It is shocking that we are still asking that question in 2025. Another question: what the fuck happened with Ronald Bax? Did he go into the bush and take his own life somewhere his body has just never been found? Did he flee the Yukon on his own? Did he have help? Has he spent the last 33 years on the run? Did he settle in a new place with a new identity and has a family who have no idea who he really is and what he's really capable of? Has he committed any other crimes since? As of this record, Ronald Bax has never been found. If he was alive today, he'd be 64 years old. And while many guns were seized from both his home and Krystal's, As of this record, the murder weapon has also never been found. Reporting for True Crime and Cocktails, I'm enraged.
Yeah, it's pretty maddening.
Yeah.
Listen, let's hit the can, grab a drink, and we'll be back to discuss more on the Crystal. What was her last name?
Senyk.
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 God damn
Yeah,
it. My phone froze. This is why I need to print everything. Crystal
you're doing
Senyk
great.
episode of True Crime and Cocktails. All right. Another clap on three. One, two, three. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime of Cocktails. True Crime of Cocktails. Haven't had a drop. We're of course discussing the Krystal Senyk case. So many things. You
Yeah.
said Pelham. You said, is that what how that's pronounced? And I love that I said, oh, I think so. I think that sounds right. As though it isn't Pelham Estates, which of course is a wine brand. Of course it's Pelham. And of course I know this. I kicked myself in the moment and then also thought, I don't need to point this out now. You mentioned St.
Mhm.
Catherine's and its connection to Nicolas Cage, and to that I
Mm,
say it is also the second stop on Lauren Ash's Call Me When You Get This tour. Tickets available, laurenash.band.
that's
Again,
beautiful.
artist presale code, call me. Okay. You mentioned Brock University. Did you know I went to a drama camp there in high school?
No kidding.
In the summer. Yep.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah. This is when things were still light in the episode, want to remind you.
Of course.
Okay. So many things. Uh, I mean, of course, the big thing that goes without saying here is just like, I don't think I need to belabor just the true audacity of these police not listening to not one, but three women. I
I
think
know.
that's part of what specifically about this case is so infuriating is that it's not just one woman. And that's not okay, by the way, obviously. But it's the fact that three women were basically begging them to take this seriously
Yeah.
and saying this man is dangerous. We all know this. Like, it's three
Mhm.
separate women.
Yeah.
It's bad enough when police ignore one woman who's reporting this kind of thing, but three about the same man? Totally avoidable. Totally avoidable. Though I also agree with you. Okay, so say they had granted a restraining order or whatever. I don't know that it would have changed anything ultimately. I think he's just, you know, I think he would have violated the restraining order and killed her anyway, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
which is why some of these things get so are so overwhelming to me because then it's like, well, then what can you do?
I
Just,
know.
stay at a women's shelter for the rest of your life? Like, is that the only way you're going to be protected? As if you literally are staying somewhere that's basically like a fortress?
Right? It just seems unfair.
Yes. And there's also like that entire world, by the way. Thank God for those shelters, without saying. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
they are life-saving, truly. I didn't realize this, but there's a women's shelter in Toronto that friends have raised money for many times, and I didn't realize this, but it's actually it's not published anywhere where it's located, and it's like
Beautiful.
you can't go there. Like, it's a whole process to like get them donations and stuff like that. If it's physical money, because it's not, they take it very seriously, and thank God, because this is one
Good.
of those situations where it's like, it's sad to me that there has to be spaces like that
Yes.
where the only way that women are protected is if it is literally that they're hidden, because that's also not a way to live, having to live in
No,
fear like that.
no.
But again, thank God that they do exist because it saves lives without question, which is, again, what we're learning from this episode. Um, Two cops in town. That's what we're dealing with, huh?
Well, there because it's like a population of
Of
200,
course.
I
But
guess.
again, it's
But
like, so there's no hope in finding another cop that'll take you seriously, finding another cop that'll listen.
right,
Because I think typically we hear about this on the show all the time. It's like, and then this one police officer really cared, right? Like, there's always like the story
right.
where it's like, but then one person really listened. And this is like, there's no chance of that if there's only two in the entire town.
Especially when every time they go to contact them, they're like, oof, busy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, mm-hmm, And that's why they have to go to the police further away. And then the police further away are like, sorry, you're too far. That's like, maybe that's the sign to up the police force there.
Feels like
If you're
maybe
so busy all the time, maybe add a third one.
someone to cover other shifts and
Yeah.
whatnots. Um, I also wrote down the advocate for the transition house who was like pushing so hard and believed them obviously and was
Yeah.
going to the RCMP and all those things. I just wrote down, bet you that was a woman.
Oh, I can guarantee it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um, just feels like that's the case. The reveal that no police reports had ever been made, that there was not even any note of anything about this guy, made me feel sick to my stomach. Again, it's
Mm.
just like you're screaming into the void. The specific that he threatened to kill himself and leave a note for the children saying, "Mommy killed me," is one of the more twisted things I think we've ever heard on this show. And we've heard a lot of shit on this show, but
Yeah.
that specific is so dark and such a um I think it just speaks to his MO because his MO was not to kill his wife. His MO
Right?
was never to kill Lynn. His MO was to torture her. So
Yeah.
it was like, I'm either going to do this thing and scar our children, and then you're going to have to live the rest of your life with our scarred children, or I'm going to kill your best friend in the world.
Yeah.
So again, so you have to live without her. Like that's again another layer. Typically with these, domestic violence situations, it is, obviously the anger escalates typically towards the partner, right? That's quite common that sadly the violence is perpetrated against the partner. But
Right.
this is a special level of depravity, if you ask me. Just like I'm going to
Hmm.
do everything I can to hurt the people that you love the most, and then you have to just live with that.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Um, I love that it was like Lynn didn't know what was going on. That one, and then they're like getting her the kids, and she doesn't know what's going on. And then at this, like, oh, you don't know what's happening? Oh, Krystal was murdered, and they think it was Ron. Like, of course they think it was Ron. We've all been
Hmm.
saying this for
Yep.
months. Ugh, my God, I feel like this list of these other cases that you had given about again how police ignored women and then the woman ended up dead. All of them are absolutely horrific. I think the one about Junin in Mexico, where the man was caught on body cam footage saying, "You'll be okay until I kill you," and
Mm.
her begging to be not left there, and then literally being killed within 4 hours. All of that is fucking awful. But then
Yeah.
him only getting 6 years.
I know.
And I was like, that, you know what that feels like to me? Misogyny that's wrapped into ageism. I feel like because that victim was older, it feels like her life wasn't given as much value in that sentencing. And
Mm.
I may be
Sure.
completely wrong, but 6 years
Oh,
for
it's insane.
also what the fuck is voluntary manslaughter? Voluntary manslaughter is murder.
Oh, yeah. He murdered her.
Manslaughter is you kill somebody, but it wasn't your intention. Vehicular manslaughter, obviously, being you
Of course.
accidentally hit someone with your car and they die. It wasn't, you weren't setting out to kill somebody. This man literally was saying, "I'm going to kill you."
Yep.
That's not, again, but what is
Nope.
I've never heard the term voluntary manslaughter before because it's an oxymoron. The whole point is that
Yeah.
manslaughter is saying, "I killed somebody, but I didn't mean to."
Right.
You can get manslaughter if you beat someone to death, right? Because it wasn't
Right.
premeditated. It was like it was accidental. I killed, yes, I killed a person because I beat them to death, but I wasn't attempting to kill them.
Right.
Voluntary manslaughter. I might have to look it up because I'm like that. I've just never heard of that before, and I think it's absolute insanity.
Yes.
What are we even talking about? Again, voluntary manslaughter is just murder.
Yeah.
What is voluntary manslaughter? I'll let it go after this.
This is going to be the joke that I wrote it down incorrectly.
No, 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 you didn't.
Okay, great. I mean, not
It's
great,
saying
but
that the offender acted in the heat of passion. What?
Hmm.
Well, then what's the difference between that and what the fuck? A state that would cause a reasonable person to become emotionally or mentally disturbed to the point that they cannot reasonably control their emotions. Voluntary manslaughter is one of two types of manslaughter, the other being involuntary manslaughter. Well, what's involuntary then?
I mean,
Okay,
I
so
think
there's no intent with involuntary, and I guess with voluntary there can be intent. I
Sure.
didn't know that. I thought that, I mean, I think it's again a bit of a stretch. Again, but no, crime of passion, I call bullshit. In this specific case, I call bullshit because he said ahead of time when things were calm,
Hmm.
you're gonna be okay until I kill you. And then within 4 hours, like there was a cool off period. That wasn't heat of the moment. If it had been heat of the moment when
Oh,
the police arrived, she would have already been dead.
100%.
I'm fired up. Ugh.
These cases do tend to do that.
It really does. Um, I like that later when people were being asked about Ron, he was being described with things like he disliked the police, he had a coke problem. And to that I say, much like has happened in the past, I like that you managed to predict that the term coke problem would be used later in the show when you said it at the beginning. What are the chances? That's a synchronicity.
It is.
Um, okay, I'm gonna need a real moment here. Real moment
Hmm.
about his artistic mentor in Spain.
Yeah.
I need so many pieces of information about that I'm certain you don't have, and I'm certain nobody
Hmm.
has. My question is this. So is this his sculptures he was doing with his
Yes.
weird chemicals? Okay, this is the 90s, and these are the things that always blow my mind. How did he get connected with an art mentor in Spain when this man lives in a town of 200 in northern Canada that's so small they only have two cops? Explain it to
Yeah.
me. It makes no sense whatsoever.
I was told they met at a trade show. I don't know where the trade show was. I don't know why that person from Spain traveled that far for a trade show. You do you.
What
Um,
trade? What
I
trade?
I assume it has to do with these sculptures.
I just think it's insane. How did they, and what, did they stay in touch on the phone and writing letters?
I guess.
I think it's the term mentor that's thrown me and also thrown me into a rage because I'm like, who is this man?
Yeah. Great question.
I can't. Next question. These men that have been spotted that people thought were Ron, more than one of them was described as having, quote, a Northern Canadian accent. What the hell is a Northern Canadian accent? How
I don't know.
different, what is that in comparison to something else?
I don't know. Like for ages, I get told about my accent, and I'm like, I don't believe I have one. But
Oh,
like,
no, I've always,
how is mine compared to someone from the Yukon?
here's the thing. I hear Canadian accents. Now that I've lived in the States for a long time, I can hear Canadian accents, whereas I never used to be able to hear them at all.
Sure.
But I think my question is like, what's the difference? Like, what is a Northern Canadian accent? I know that the East Coast Canada can kind of get into like almost Irish sounding.
Mm,
Okay. Um, but I didn't know that there, and then of course Quebec, I'm just finding excuses to say Quebec, I guess, because you complimented me and that's nice. That's French, so that's something else. But again, Northern Canadian. If your dealer listener have any insight into that, I'd love to know. I'd love to know what a Northern Canadian accent sounds like.
sure. Yeah, it's the fact that multiple people said it, but then were they just thinking they sound Canadian? And so then they're like Canada's Northern Canadian? I don't know.
It's a great question. Um, Okay, this Terry Clinton Hall character, you brought up the fact that his hands were badly burned, but quote, it didn't affect the fingerprints. That's absurd. That doesn't make sense. I know that later it was like the FBI used the facial software and said, okay, it's absolutely not Ron.
Sure.
Fantastic. But to me, it's just like to rule out that it's like, oh no, the prints definitely still match. When was the fire?
I have so many questions.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Again, it's lazy. You know what? It's lazy. Grow up. Um, Lynn refusing to be on Unsolved Mysteries. Here's what I have to say about this. I understand that this is a terrible thing that happened to her in her life. But you know
Sure.
who it was more terrible for? Krystal.
Yeah.
And this is your best friend in the world? The idea, I'm not suggesting she had to appear on the show. If she felt
Sure.
uncomfortable, didn't want to be interviewed, didn't want any of that sort of attention, totally respect that. But you can sign off and say, yes, you can do this, but I don't want to be involved.
Sure.
It's the fact that she literally wouldn't sign off, so then blocked it from being a real segment.
Yeah. But I'm also like, was there really no way to do it without her? Without her saying yes? Like you couldn't just give her a pseudonym. You couldn't just.
Maybe it's a respect that they do for the families. That it's like if
That is
someone is like, I
possible.
don't want this, then they're like, we can't, it's unethical to push
Maybe.
forward.
Maybe.
I mean, which again, I respect. And like I said, I respect if she's like, I just can't talk about it. I don't want to talk about it or whatever. That's I'm unable to. But to stand in the way of like
It,
anything that could potentially get the
yeah.
case solved is so sad to me. I mean,
Yeah.
again,
Oh, I don't
if
get it.
God forbid, I don't need to tell you, you wind up dead. I'll be on.
We're knocking on their door.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
We've
It
got a
is going to
fresh
be
hot
within.
case.
I'm gonna.
Yeah.
That's the rest of my life. Then
Oh yeah.
done.
Same.
Like okay,
100%.
my career's over. This is what I devote my time to. Like getting justice for this. Period. Without question. Are you kidding?
Yes.
They would get sick of me being on the news if it was unsolved.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Good luck. No fucking way. I can't imagine. I just can't imagine it. And like knowing that it was if in this with these details, if it was my own spouse, if my spouse killed you and we
Oh.
knew that he killed you, but he just was nowhere to be found, guess what? Changing my name to Dog the fucking Bounty Hunter because that's the rest of my life. I will find him with my own fucking hands. Gladly. I'd be one of those when they finally found that fucking piece of shit. I love that I'm talking about a man that doesn't even exist, but it's so real for me right now. When the police drag that fucking piece of shit into the station, you know what I'm going to
Mhm.
say to them? I'm going to say, give me 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes. I want you to turn away. I want you to walk away. I want you to get a coffee. I want you to get a phone call from your wife that you have to answer right now. I need 5 minutes. And I want you, and then you can come back.
I just want to ask, is this what Dog the Bounty Hunter's like? I've never seen. Or is
Oh,
this you've just morphed into something more John Wick?
I've morphed into
I'm
something
the
more John
puppy.
Wick.
I'm the puppy, and
You're the puppy. I'm John Wick.
yeah. Yeah, I
Yes.
get that. I get that.
Yeah.
Look,
No,
it's
I
an
mean,
honor. Same. Oh,
yeah, I'm like, great. And I said, listen, and you know what else I'd say? I'll leave no marks.
I think my favorite was how calmly you went, get a coffee. I
Yeah.
think that,
Get a coffee.
yeah.
It's ringing. Someone's got to answer it. You need to be anywhere but here for the next 5 minutes, and I need you to do this for me.
Mhm. You'll leave no marks.
I'll leave no marks.
I love how
Guess what?
fired up.
Guess what?
Yeah.
I lied.
Well, that's what you're gonna they open the door, you
Yep.
come walking out, and that's when you go, I lied.
Yep.
And he's just like a bloody pulp of a mess.
Yep. I won't kill him
No,
because I will not go to jail for that man.
of course.
I'll do whatever. They can get me off. Listen, we've learned so much about voluntary manslaughter. I'm sure I could get voluntary assault and battery. You know what I mean?
Sure. Not when they play this clip in court.
Yeah, this is damning. This is damning. Yeah.
Yeah, we just have to
Yeah.
ensure that none of the stuff leads up to that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
listen, here's the thing. Let's get real here. I'm 42. I'm nowhere near being married. The chances that I would have a spouse at all are already slim, just statistically speaking. And so then for me to have a spouse that would do something so heinous, I mean, that's another leap. So I think that we're probably good.
I'm just fascinated to know, like, if 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 he's like so super into you, doesn't like me even a bit. Like,
Don't again, this isn't about that. This is about hurting me. This is about controlling me.
right, you're right. He's not gonna take multiple flights to get here to be able to take me out.
I love it. I love that you're like, there, here are all the reasons why you don't have to beat this man with a crowbar.
Because, of course, even though I'm dead,
Hmm.
I don't want you to have to do prison time. Although, don't think you're not coming out with knuckle tattoos.
Listen.
How many letters is the word revenge? Just like,
Yeah.
oh, God, we've
Listen.
lost it.
All I'm saying is, it's very rare for me to judge a victim on this show, but do I
Sure.
judge it? I do a little bit. I do. I just
It's a
think
surprising choice.
I just think in a world in which we know that shows like America's Most Wanted and Unsolved Mysteries have solved crimes.
Yeah,
They have. So again, to me, it's like if you're at this point and you're so many years out of this thing and there's absolutely no sort of end to this thing, like, wouldn't it be worth it? To me, well, and to me also, I think it's like just emotionally, it's like even if my belief was he probably killed himself in the woods and the body was never found, I just don't think I could stop.
oh yeah. And that's part of it. I'm like, did he specifically do that so they'd always wonder if he was out there? Like, did he go
Hmm.
somewhere, take his own life in a place that he's like, they'll never find me, so they'll always wonder. So it's an additional fuck you? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I would like to have his picture like pasted everywhere. Pasted. I just want, like, I don't, if he is out there living somewhere, I don't want him to be comfortable.
Yeah. I mean, do I think he's alive? I don't.
Sure.
I don't,
You think
ultimately.
like
That's,
right away, or are you thinking like tried to
I think it
last
could
in
have
the
been,
woods?
I think it could have been accidental.
Mm,
I think he could have killed himself. I mean, he talked about killing himself a lot, so it's
sure.
definitely plausible. Um, I think it's possible that he, went too far into the woods, didn't have enough gear, whatever. I think it
Sure.
could have been an accidental situation. I just don't. You love this. I don't know that he's smart enough that I would believe that he'd be able to navigate this in the 90s where we don't have a phone attached to our hand back then. How is he going
Right.
to know exactly where he's going? How is he going to know what ferry to take? How is he going to know what city to get to? There would just be so many
Right.
opportunities to get caught. Now, I understand also that he had a massive head start. So is it possible? It's absolutely possible, but I don't know. I think if he had gotten away again, I don't think he's smart enough. I think he would have gotten caught by now. He would have been found. That's my, theory. Complete speculation.
Sure. I mean, it makes sense.
Do you think he got away? Do you think he's alive?
I kind of assume, well, see, it's tough because part of me is like, if he was just going to go live in the woods and be like, this is where I live from now on, why not take the dog?
That's the thing.
And so then I'm like, I can see him not taking the dog if he's going on the run for an extended, like if he's like, I'm going to head into the States and all
Right.
of that. Um, so I can see him not taking the dog there. And then obviously, if he was going to take his own life, being like, I can't, I have to get rid of the dog. But I'm like, unless the reason was he just wants to screw with her even more and make them worried that he's out there somewhere, then what would be the point in going and like hiding your own body? And then I'm like, where did he go? How long did he have this in mind?
It was also March, and
Yeah.
I don't know the ins and outs of the weather in Yukon, but I know that in March in other places in Canada, it can still be quite cold and snowy. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming that it would probably have been pretty fucking cold in the Yukon
Oh, yeah.
in March. So I also just think like, isn't there a possibility where he's like, I could survive, and then he froze to death and his body got eaten or
Oh,
by you
100%.
know what I mean? Like it's like to me, it's like I don't know that I agree with you. I don't know that it's like, did he really just go somewhere private to kill himself? I don't know if I buy that. I kind of buy that it was just like he went out to the woods, he froze to death, a animal ate his remains, and or it was so deep into the woods it was just never found, and then over time the body just, you know,
It's more than possible.
Yeah.
I, the idea of him still being alive and that he's just lived the last like 30 some years of his life is gross. But then I'm like, if he can get caught, then that'd be great.
Yeah.
If he's still alive, so he can actually get justice. But the problem is when you see his face, you're like, oh, I've seen like 20 of that guy.
Right.
Like he's just got such a everyday kind of average Joe face. So it's like,
Mm.
okay, well, who knows?
Who knows?
But do I think he made it all the way down to like Mississippi? I mean, that was like almost 20 years later. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know that I think either of the people they saw were him, but I'm just fascinated to know where he would have gone and how he would have made money to go any further.
This is the other thing. What was his plan really? How much food
Mm.
did he take? How much water did he take? Again, winter camping is not impossible, but in March in the
Oh,
Yukon, I mean,
oh yeah, that would have been close to minus 40.
it'd have to be.
And at
So
one
again,
point,
that's
yeah, they
that's
said they stopped the search for the day at like 9 or something at night because by then the snow had become so hard that finding tracks in it were impossible.
yeah, I think he died.
It's more than possible. Maybe
I
he
just
went
think
out and was like, I'm gonna, maybe he went out knowing that he's like, I'm just gonna go as far
yes,
as I can. And when I get
yes,
tired, I'm basically just gonna lay down and die.
yes. That I would buy.
Yeah, that is possible.
Or he delusionally thought he could get ahead and didn't. I just again, I'm like the amount of gear I think that you would require to keep yourself alive in that kind of cold,
Yes.
it's going to be more than just a few pieces. I mean, there would be a fire, like there would be like again, I don't even know. Like I feel like winter camping, people don't typically camp at that temperature.
I assume not, but I mean, I guess there's also the possibility that he went to someone and they
Mm,
were like, let's get you out. Or they gave him a car or even just gave him a ride or something. And we're like, and now there you go.
yeah. Yeah, I mean it's possible. I think the simplest explanation is probably true that he died shortly after, but you're right. There's no way to truly know. And what could have helped? What could have helped? An Unsolved Mysteries episode about it.
Yeah. And who knows, maybe someday, but they rarely they rarely touch Canadian cases. I mean, they
Mm,
do occasionally, and the new one had done at least one Canadian one. But
yeah. Well, listen, Christy Oxborrow, fantastic work as always. Riveted, chilling, well done. 12 out of 10.
it's an honor.
And listen, we thank you, dear listeners, for joining us for this wild ride. If you haven't already, give us a follow on the socials on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at True Crime and Cocktails, on Twitter at Not Detectives. If you'd like some bonus content, go over to patreon.com/True Crime and Cocktails to learn more about our subscription-based service over there. And of course, the only place for official True Crime and Cocktails merch is, of course, truecrewmerch.com. So check that out if you're interested. And remember, LauraNash.band. Come see me on tour. Cannot wait. So excited. Christy, do you want to tell the people about next week's episode?
On the next True Crime and Cocktails, Peter Falconio.
I thought you were going to say Peter Falcone, and I was like, wait a second, Jenny Garth's ex? That's Peter Fanicelli. I need to just put myself to bed. Um, dear God. Christy, do you want to say goodnight to the people?
Happy back to school, teachers.
Yeah. Happy back to school. That was kind of a letdown on my part. Sorry.